Glass exploded across the conference hall. David slammed the table so hard the microphone shook. Who approved this? Silence hit instantly. Every board member froze. On the screen behind them, his entire empire was being rewritten in real time. And then the doors opened. Maya walked in. Calm, no anger, no tears, just control. And beside her, lawyers. David stared at her like he was seeing a stranger for the first time. Because in that moment, he realized something terrifying. He was no longer the most powerful person in the room. Before we continue, if you've ever seen betrayal destroy someone who thought they were untouchable, like this video, subscribe and stay till the end, because what happens next will completely flip what you think you know about power, marriage, and loyalty. 8 months earlier, David Okoye was the kind of man people pointed at with admiration. At 39, he was everywhere. Business magazines, tech podcasts, luxury events, interviews. People called him the face of modern African entrepreneurship. His company, Nexasphere Technologies, had become one of the fastest growing logistics platforms in West Africa. Investors loved him because he spoke with confidence. Employees respected him because he looked like proof that hard work still meant something. And online, people worshipped him, especially men. To them, David represented escape, the self-made millionaire, the hustler who started from nothing. What nobody saw was the woman quietly holding the entire foundation together behind the scenes. Every morning, Maya woke up before him, even after 12 years of marriage. She packed his meals herself despite the chefs in the house. She reminded him about meetings, corrected his speeches when nobody was looking, helped him rehearse interviews late at night. And every single time he won an award, he smiled into cameras and said, "I built myself." At first, that sentence never bothered her because she loved him. Back when they first met, David was nothing like the man the world knew now. He had only 2 shirts, one black, one blue. He used to stand outside crowded cyber cafes with sweaty printed proposals in hand, begging investors for 10 minutes of their time. Most people ignored him. Some insulted him. But Maya stayed. She still remembered those nights in their tiny one-room apartment when NEPA would take light for hours and David would continue working under rechargeable lamps while mosquitoes nearly carried both of them away. "I'm sorry," he used to whisper while staring at his laptop. "I know this isn't the life you imagined." Maya would smile and place Indomie in front of him. "Then build the life," she'd tell him softly. "I'll wait." And she did. She sold jewelry quietly when his first startup failed. She lied to landlords for him, skipped meals sometimes, defended him when her own relatives mocked her. Love doesn't pay bills, her aunt once warned her, but Maya believed in him more than he believed in himself. What David never fully understood was that her wealthy father, Mr. Bello, had been watching everything quietly from a distance. The old man never liked David at first, not because he was poor, because he was proud. "There's a dangerous hunger inside that boy," he once told Maya. "Men like that either become legends or disasters." Still, when Nexasphere almost collapsed 4 years into business, Mr. Bello stepped in secretly. The company had been drowning in debt, staff salaries delayed, investors pulling out. David was one bad month away from total ruin. Then suddenly, emergency funding appeared through private investment entities. David cried that night. Actually cried. Maya still remembered him kneeling beside their bed, holding her hands. "We made it," he whispered emotionally. "We survived." She almost told him the truth then. Almost. But her father stopped her. "Let him keep his pride," Mr. Bello said quietly. "Some men cannot survive knowing they were rescued." So she stayed silent. Years passed. Success came violently. Money changed everything faster than love could keep up. The small apartment became a mansion in Okoye. The whole Corolla became convoys of black SUVs. The same people who mocked David now fought for invitations to his parties. And slowly, something inside him changed. Not immediately. That was the dangerous part. At first, it was little things. Correcting Maya publicly, interrupting her during conversations, mocking her old-fashioned thinking around richer friends. One night during dinner with investors, Maya suggested expanding into smaller local markets instead of focusing only on luxury corporate clients. David laughed before she even finished speaking. "Baby," he said casually, while sipping wine, "you don't really understand how scaling works." Everyone laughed politely. Maya forced a smile. But under the table, her fingers slowly tightened around the edge of her dress. That night, inside their bedroom, David noticed she was unusually quiet. "What?" he asked while removing his wristwatch. "You embarrassed me." He sighed immediately. "Maya, come on, you're overthinking." "You laughed at me." "I was joking." "No," she said softly. "You were performing." David looked irritated already. "Why do you always take things personally these days?" Those words sat heavy inside her chest long after he fell asleep. Because deep down, she knew something was slipping away, and she didn't know how to stop it. The silence in the room that night didn't feel normal. It felt like something had already broken, just not loudly enough to be noticed yet. Maya lay on her side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, while David slept facing the other direction, one hand loosely holding his phone like it was still part of him even in sleep. At exactly 2:13 a.m., his phone lit up. Once, twice, then stopped. Maya didn't move at first. She wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. She never had been. Even when people whispered things, even when her instincts told her otherwise, she always chose patience over paranoia. But tonight, something inside her didn't let it go. She turned slightly. The screen had gone dark again. David shifted in his sleep, murmuring something she couldn't hear. Then the phone lit up again. This time she saw the name clearly before it dimmed. "Tessa." Maya blinked once, then again. Not because she didn't understand, but because she did. And for a few seconds, she just lay there, staring at the ceiling again, as if looking away from it would undo what she saw. In the morning, David acted like nothing happened. He kissed her forehead quickly while tying his cufflinks. "Big meeting today," he said casually. "Don't wait up for dinner." Maya nodded slowly. "Okay." That was all she said, but her voice didn't carry the same warmth anymore. He didn't notice, or maybe he did, but didn't care enough to ask. After he left, the house felt too quiet. Maya sat alone in the dining room for a long time, staring at untouched breakfast. Then she finally picked up her phone and searched the name. Tessa. She found her instantly. Influencer, luxury lifestyle content, private jets in captions that didn't match her age. And then she saw it. A recent post, a blurred image of a man's hand holding hers under a dinner table. The caption read, "Some men don't belong to one place." Maya didn't react immediately. She just zoomed in slowly. The watch on the man's wrist was unmistakable. David's. Her breath didn't even shake at first. It came later, quiet, controlled, delayed, like her body needed time to accept what her mind already knew. That evening, David came home later than usual. He looked lighter, happier. That was the worst part, because men who feel guilty usually look heavier. But David looked free. He dropped his keys on the table and loosened his tie. Traffic was crazy, he said. Maya was sitting on the couch. I saw your phone last night, she said softly. The room changed instantly, not loud, just colder. David paused for half a second before laughing lightly. What are you talking about? Tessa. The name landed between them like a dropped plate. David exhaled slowly, then sat down like he was tired of standing. Maya, don't do this. Don't do what? Turn nothing into something. She looked at him for a long time, not angry, not loud, just studying him. Is she nothing? She asked quietly. David rubbed his forehead. You don't understand how things work in my world right now. I'm under pressure. Investors, branding, image. People like her help the company stay relevant. Maya blinked once. So she's part of the business now? He didn't answer immediately. That silence was enough. Maya nodded slowly. Okay. Just that. One word. But it wasn't acceptance. It was recognition. David stood up. Look, I don't have energy for drama. I'm trying to build something here. Maya's voice dropped even softer. David, you already built it. He paused. Something in her tone made him turn slightly. But she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at nothing, like she was somewhere far away. Just not with me anymore, she finished. That night, she didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't because of pain alone. It was because something else had started forming underneath it. Something quiet, structured, patient, like a decision that had been waiting years to be made. Meanwhile, across town, David sat in a private lounge with Tessa laughing softly as she recorded content on her phone. You're always so serious, she teased, resting her head on his shoulder. Relax a little. David smiled. For the first time in weeks, he actually felt like he could breathe. I already told you, he said. I just need balance. Tessa smirked. Balance or escape? He didn't answer. Because deep down, even he didn't know anymore. And in another part of the city, Maya opened her laptop for the first time in years. Not to check messages, not to browse, but to call someone she hadn't spoken to directly in a long time. Her father. Mr. Bello answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd finally stop being patient, his voice said calmly. Maya didn't respond immediately. Then she whispered, He's changed. A pause. Then her father replied, No, he just stopped pretending. Maya closed her eyes, and for the first time since she met David, she didn't argue. She didn't defend him. She simply said, What do I do now? And Mr. Bello's answer came quietly. Now, you stop protecting what is already trying to destroy you. The next morning felt different in a way David couldn't explain. Not in the house itself. Everything looked the same. Same polished floors. Same quiet staff. Same framed photos of their wedding on the wall that once made him feel proud. But the air felt thinner. Maya was already awake when he came down, sitting at the dining table. No breakfast prepared for him this time. That alone should have told him something, but David barely noticed. He was already scrolling through his phone, half listening to a voice note from his assistant about a delayed investor meeting. You're up early, he said casually, dropping into the chair opposite her. Maya didn't look up immediately. I didn't sleep much. David nodded absent-mindedly. Same. Tessa kept me up, talking about content ideas. That was when he finally looked at her properly. She didn't react. Not a blink, not a flinch. Just silence. David slowed slightly. What? Maya placed her phone gently on the table. I called my father last night. That made him pause. Not fear, not yet. Just curiosity. Okay, and Maya finally looked at him, and for the first time there was no softness in her eyes, just clarity. I asked him what I should do about you. David let out a small breath of laughter, leaning back. Wow, so now we're involving your father in marriage. Issues? Maya didn't answer. That silence again. The same silence that was starting to make him uncomfortable without him understanding why. Then she said quietly, "You're not as independent as you think you are." That line hit differently. Not loud, not aggressive, but precise. David frowned. What is that supposed to mean? Before she could answer, his phone rang. His assistant. He picked it up quickly. Yes? A pause. His expression shifted slightly. What do you mean the investors want to review the cap table again? Another pause. His grip tightened. Who requested it? He listened, longer this time, then slowly lowered the phone. When he looked back at Maya, something subtle had changed in his face. What did you do? He asked quietly. Maya didn't blink. I didn't do anything. That's not what this feels like. She leaned back slightly. For years, you thought success made you alone at the top. Davy stayed quiet now. But you were never alone, she continued. You just never looked down to see who was holding the structure. That sentence landed heavier than anything she had said before. David stood up. What are you talking about? Maya finally exhaled. David, sit down. Something in her tone made him hesitate. Not authority, not threat. Something worse, certainty. He sat, slowly. Maya pushed a thin folder across the table. He didn't open it immediately. I never wanted it to come to this, she said quietly. I really didn't. David opened the folder. The first page was a shareholder structure breakdown. His eyes scanned it quickly at first. Then slower. Then again. Then stopped completely. No, he whispered. He flipped another page, then another. His breathing changed. You're joking. Maya shook her head slightly. I'm not. David looked up at her. That's impossible. I know every investor in this company. Maya's voice stayed calm. You know the ones you met. Silence. David flipped another page, then froze. His name was not at the top. Not even close. A holding structure layered through multiple entities, and one name sitting quietly in control. MB Holdings. Controlled through trust structures, linked to... He looked up. Your father? Maya nodded once. David laughed, but it was broken. No, that doesn't make sense. I built Nexasphere. Maya didn't raise her voice. You built it. She paused. Just not alone. David stood up again, pushing the chair back hard. This is sabotage. You're trying to take my company because of what? Tessa? Are you serious right now? Maya's expression finally shifted. Not anger. Sadness. Genuine sadness. This has nothing to do with her. David pointed at the folder. Then what is this? Maya looked at him for a long moment before answering. This is what was always there. A knock interrupted them. A staff member stepped in carefully. Sir, the board has requested an emergency meeting this morning. David turned sharply. What board meeting? The staff member hesitated. Maya answered softly before he could. The one you were never fully in control of. That was the moment it started sinking in. Not fully, but enough. David looked between the staff member, the folder, and Maya. For the first time in years, he didn't know what was happening around him. And that feeling was unfamiliar and dangerous, because men like David don't fear losing love. They fear losing control. And right now, he was losing both. David didn't sleep that night. Not because he was afraid of losing money, but because for the first time in years, he couldn't recognize the system he thought he controlled. Every few minutes, his phone lit up with updates, messages from his assistant, missed calls from board members, unknown numbers he didn't want to answer. And one message from Tessa. Are you okay? People are saying weird things online. He stared at it for a long time, then finally replied, I'll call you later. But he didn't. Instead, he sat in his home office, staring at the shareholder document again. The more he looked at it, the more real it became. Layered ownership, trust structures, voting rights he had never fully understood. And at the center of it all, Maya's father, Mr. Bello. David muttered to himself. This doesn't make sense. But even as he said it, a small part of him knew something he had refused to admit for years. He had never truly understood where the early rescue funding came from. He had just accepted it because it felt like victory, and men like David don't question victory. They worship it. Morning came too fast. He arrived at the office earlier than everyone else. The building felt different. People were whispering, not openly, not yet, but enough for him to notice. As he walked through the glass lobby, conversation stopped mid-sentence. One intern bowed too quickly. Another avoided eye contact completely. David's chest tightened. By the time he reached the executive floor, his assistant was already waiting. Sir, the board is inside. David nodded once. I know. But before he could enter, the assistant hesitated. There's something else. David stopped. What? She swallowed. The press is outside the building. That made him pause. For what? She didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, they got wind of the restructuring. David felt his stomach drop slightly. Not fear. Something closer to humiliation. He pushed the boardroom doors open. Inside, the atmosphere was frozen. 10 people, all seated, all waiting. And at the far end, Maya, calm, composed, like she had been sitting there longer than anyone else. David walked in slowly. What is going on? He asked. No one answered immediately. A lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. David, due to recent verification of equity structure and voting distribution, there has been a temporary reassignment of executive authority pending review. David scoffed. Temporary reassignment? Based on what? The lawyer looked down at the papers. Based on confirmed majority controlling interest. David turned sharply. To who? Silence. Then Maya spoke softly. To the actual controlling structure of the company. David laughed, but it sounded forced. This is insane. I built this company from nothing. You can't just rewrite history because of some paperwork. Maya finally looked at him directly. You didn't build it from nothing. That line landed differently now. He had heard it before. But this time, it didn't feel like emotion. It felt like fact. David stepped closer. So what is this, Maya? Revenge? Her expression didn't change. No. Then what do you want? A pause, then quietly, clarity. David shook his head. This is because of Tessa, isn't it? You think humiliating me publicly is going to fix whatever insecurity you have? A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Maya didn't react. But something in the room changed. Not louder. Colder. She slowly placed a folder on the table. I never cared about Tessa enough for her to destroy anything, she said. Then she added, But you did. David frowned. Before he could respond, one of the screens on the wall lit up. A news alert. Then another. Then another. He turned slowly. His face appeared on multiple headlines already circulating. Tech CEO under scrutiny over ownership structure. Questions arise over Nexasphere funding origins. Insider reports suggest hidden majority stakeholder. David stepped back slightly. No, he whispered. The lawyer spoke again, more carefully this time. Sir, regulators and media are requesting clarification. The structure filings were legally verified this morning. David turned sharply. To who? No one answered. Because they already knew. It wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was exposure. And exposure spreads faster than truth. His phone vibrated violently. Tessa calling. He answered immediately. Tessa! Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was cautious. David, what is happening? People are saying you're being removed. He paused. They're lying. A silence. Then she said something that ate harder than anything else that morning. I saw your name drop from the investor portal. David closed his eyes briefly. That's temporary. Is it? Her tone changed slightly. Not emotional. Evaluating. And that's when David realized something else. She wasn't on his side. She was watching the situation like everyone else. He ended the call, slowly. When he looked up again, Maya was still watching him. Not satisfied, not angry, just present. And that was worse. Because anger meant emotion. Presence meant decision. David's voice dropped. You did this, Maya answered calmly. No. Then she paused. You did. The room went silent. David looked around the table. No one defended him. No one spoke for him. For the first time, he realized something terrifying. He was alone in a room full of people who used to work under him, and none of them were afraid of him anymore. Outside, camera flashes started popping against the glass walls of the building. The press had arrived, and somewhere in that growing chaos, David Okoye finally understood what loss actually felt like. Not sudden, not dramatic, but slow, structural, and irreversible. The cameras outside the building didn't stop. They multiplied. David could see them now through the glass walls of the executive floor, flashing like a storm that had already decided where to land. His name was on every screen, every headline, every phone in the room that dared to light up. But inside the boardroom, the silence was even louder. David stood still for a moment, his jaw tight, eyes moving from face to face as if waiting for someone, anyone, to tell him this was still reversible. No one did. He turned sharply toward Maya. You planned all of this behind my back. Maya didn't react immediately. Then she spoke softly. No, David. Or pause. I protected you from it for years. That hit differently. Not like an accusation, like a correction. David laughed once, but it came out broken. Protected me? From my own company? Maya nodded slightly. From what it actually was. He stepped closer, voice rising now. You're rewriting my life like I was just a passenger in it. Maya finally stood up. Not aggressively, just done sitting. And that simple movement changed the room again. Because when she stood, everyone else suddenly looked like they were waiting for instructions. Even David noticed it. And that realization made something in him flicker. Uncertainty. Maya spoke calmly. You think you built Nexasphere alone because that's the story you needed to survive. David shook his head. That's not a story. That's my life. Maya didn't argue. She just looked at him for a long moment, then said, Then explain why it never collapsed when you ran out of options. Silence. David opened his mouth, closed it again. For the first time, there was no quick answer. Maya continued, Explain why payroll was always fixed before staff protested. Explain why investors who had already pulled out suddenly stayed. Explain why your miracle funding always arrived right on time. David's breathing slowed slightly. His eyes shifted. Because somewhere deep down, he had always called it luck, or timing, or skill, anything except what it might actually be. Maya stepped closer now. Or maybe you just never asked Who was holding the structure together when you were busy becoming the face of it? That line landed heavy, not loud, just final. David looked away for a second, then muttered, "So this is it? You take everything now, and I just disappear?" Maya's expression softened slightly, not with pity, with truth. "I didn't take anything from you." A pause. "I stopped covering the cracks you refused to see." Before David could respond, the boardroom doors opened again. A legal advisor walked in quickly, breath slightly rushed. "Sir, the emergency filing has been processed. The temporary executive authority has been confirmed pending full audit review." David turned sharply. "Whose authority?" The advisor hesitated, then answered carefully. "Majority controlling shareholder." David looked at Maya again. His voice dropped. "Say it." Maya didn't move. David repeated, slower now. "Say whose name is on it." A bit of silence. Then Maya spoke. "Bello Family Trust Holdings." David blinked. Once, twice. Like the name didn't fully register at first. Then it did. His face changed slightly. Not anger now. Something closer to disbelief trying to survive reality. "Your father?" Maya nodded. David let out a short, sharp laugh. "This is insane." "So what? I've been working under your family this whole time and didn't know?" Maya answered simply. "Yes." That one word did more damage than any argument. David stepped back, hand rubbing his forehead. No, that's not how it works. I make the decisions, I run the company, He stopped himself. Because even as he said it, the confidence wasn't holding. Maya spoke again, quieter. "You made decisions inside a structure you never fully understood." David stared at her. For the first time, his voice wasn't angry. It was strained. "Why are you doing this now?" Maya didn't answer immediately. Then, "Because you stopped seeing me." A pause. "You stopped seeing anyone except yourself." The room felt heavier. Even the lawyers stayed silent. David shook his head slowly. "This is because of her." Maya frowned slightly. "Tessa?" He nodded quickly. "You're punishing me because I made a mistake." Maya looked at him for a long moment, then said something that made the hair change again. "If it was just her, I would have left years ago." Silence. David froze slightly. Maya continued. "You didn't just cheat, David." A pause. "You erased me while still standing next to me." That line didn't sound emotional. It sounded final. Before David could respond, his phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. He looked down. Investor withdrawals, press statements, board confirmations, one after another. His grip tightened on the phone, and for the first time in his life, he didn't know what to respond to first. Maya picked up her bag slowly. "I'm not here to destroy you," she said quietly. David looked up quickly. "Then what is this?" She paused at the door. A long pause, then answered, "This is what happens when you finally face what you've been ignoring." She walked out, and this time, no one stopped her. David stayed standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by people who no longer needed his permission to move. And outside the glass walls, his world kept collapsing in real time. David didn't go home that night. He couldn't. The house felt like a place that already belonged to someone else's memory. Instead, he sat in his car parked outside the office building long after the press had left, staring at a screen full of notifications he no longer had the energy to read properly. Every few minutes, another alert came in. Investor exits, board confirmations, legal inquiries, media speculation. But what broke him wasn't the noise. It was the silence from people who used to respond instantly, especially Tessa. He finally called her. She picked up after a few rings. "David." Her voice wasn't warm anymore. It was careful, measured, like she was speaking to someone she didn't fully recognize. "Where are you?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "Everywhere and nowhere." A pause. Then she said, "People are saying you've been removed." David closed his eyes. "They're exaggerating." Another pause. Then Tessa spoke again, softer this time. "My management told me to pause all public association with you for now." That sentence hit differently. David sat up slightly. "Pause association until things stabilize." He laughed once, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. "So I may risk now." Tessa didn't answer immediately, and that silence was the answer. David nodded slowly to himself. "All right." Then he ended the call, just like that. No argument, no pleading, just realization setting in. For the first time, he understood something clearly. He wasn't losing power. He was being removed from relevance. The next morning, he tried one last thing. He went to see an old investor he once trusted, a man who used to call him the future of African tech. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. David barely finished explaining before the man raised a hand. "It's not personal," he said, but David could tell it was. It always is. When money moves, loyalty becomes history. By afternoon, David returned to the office again. But this time, he wasn't met with whispers. He was met with distance. His access card didn't work on 2 floors. His assistant didn't meet his eyes. And the boardroom door was already open when he arrived. Inside, Maya was there again, calm as always, waiting. David stood at the entrance for a moment, then walked in slowly. "This is overkill," he said quietly. Maya looked up. "No," she replied. "This is conclusion." David shook his head. "You're destroying everything I built." Maya didn't react immediately. Then she said, "You're still talking like you built it alone." That silence again, the kind that forces truth to sit down in the room. David stepped closer. "What do you want from me, Maya?" She studied him for a long moment. Not hatred, not satisfaction, just distance. "I wanted you to see me," she said. A pause. "You didn't?" David's voice dropped. "I did see you." Maya shook her head slightly. "No. You saw what I did for you, but not who I was to you." That landed heavier than anything before. David looked down briefly, then back up, his voice softer now. "So what happens now?" Maya leaned back slightly. "The restructuring is complete." Another pause. "The company continues." David swallowed. "And me?" That question lingered longer than expected. Maya looked at him for a long moment, then answered honestly, "That depends on what you choose to become after this." David let out a breath, almost a laugh. "I don't even know what I am without it." Maya nodded once. "That's the part you avoided for too long." Silence filled the room again, not heavy now, just empty. David looked at her properly for the first time in a long time. Not as a wife, not as a problem, not as background, but as someone who had been there through everything he now couldn't reverse. "Did you ever stop loving me?" he asked quietly. Maya didn't answer immediately. That pause hurt more than anything else. Then she said, "No." A pause. "I just stopped abandoning myself to keep loving you." David closed his eyes. That was the real ending. Not betrayal, not revenge, but recognition. When he opened them again, she was already standing, ready to leave. He didn't stop her this time, because somewhere deep down, he finally understood. He didn't lose her in a boardroom. He lost her slowly. In every moment, he chose pride over presence. And now, there was nothing left to negotiate, only consequences. Maya walked out quietly. No applause, no drama, just finality. and David Okoye stayed behind in a room that no longer needed him, realizing that the empire he thought he built had only ever stood because someone else refused to let it fall.